ultimately, when people dream about having their business and being successful in it, they're not dreaming of like building a prison of their own making in a job they can never leave. But unfortunately, a lot of business owners end up in that situation because they start by doing everything and they just never leave that place.
Welcome to the Business Growth Masterclass, where business growth is made simple. I'm your host, Albert Gillespie.
And I'm your co-host, Kellen Ketchersid. Join us as we bring you stories from business leaders so you can learn from their wins, their losses, and everything in between.
Today's episode is an episode with just me and Kellen.
Hello.
Where I wanted to kind of debunk some jargon that we hear all the time. I think a lot of times when we talk to business owners and we talk about, systems and processes, they kind of roll their eyes and they're like, okay, Mr. MBA speak. What does that even mean for your everyday Main Street business? And so wanted to do an episode with you and just kind of talk through like, what does that look like practically? What does that mean for, the Main Street business? What are systems and processes and what do we mean when we say that?
Yeah. And a lot of times what we're getting at is just how the business can run without you. Because ultimately, when people dream about having their business and being successful in it, they're not dreaming of like building a prison of their own making in a job they can never leave. But unfortunately, a lot of business owners end up in that situation because they start by doing everything and they just never leave that place. They are the business. And so everything is going to have to depend on them. When the doors open, they've got to be there, or they've got to be at least a big presence. And that will wear you out unless you are just like in love with doing all the things that go into your business, which most people aren't. They usually just like one narrow thing that's their skill set. You need a system and processes. So what does that mean? It can look like a lot of different things. Systems can be your software. It can be a series of spreadsheets. It can be a bunch of notes on a yellow pad. And some people have really bad systems that look like that. What we try to do at Stack Business Coaching is take what's in your head and put it into a framework that somebody else could look at, that you can hire. And now they can make decisions the way you would make them without having to come and talk to you. And I think that's really at the heart of what it means to build an effective system is how well can I build that so I get as few questions or needs for approval or thumbs up as possible. And the ultimate dream is to get to your business to a place where it can run without you. And if we want to get into how to accomplish that, I'd love to talk more about it.
Yeah, I think that idea, you hear it all over social media, the business that runs without you. You don't have to be there. It's mailbox money. It's this or that. And that feels so silly and like pie in the sky that, that's not real. I think of the blue collar, Main Street business, the owner who's like, you just got to show up with your work boots on and you go get the job done and make some money.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what we're talking about is, taking a step back is like, why did you go into business in the first place? And, I bet it's because you wanted to be where you want to be, when you want to be, do what you want to do, when you want to do it, and be able to, put in effort and see a reward for that. And so I think, all right, we're 3 minutes in and I'm going to mention a book. I just read The 5 Types of Wealth. And the main principle from that is, when we think of wealth, we think of money.
Money, yeah.
And if that's the only measuring stick we're using, we're going to look back at a life that's probably full of regret,
Yeah.
full of, selfishness, full of spending a lot of time at work. And the main principle is like, there are other buckets, there's, spiritual wealth, there's relational wealth, there's mental wealth, there's physical wealth, like taking care of your body.
Your body, yeah.
And I think as a business owner, eventually you've built something that's more than a hobby and that has the capacity to continue to grow and to continue to impact more and more people. And there's only one of you, and there's only 24 hours in a day.
Right.
And so if you can systemize your business, which means, you get good at delivering a certain good or service. And then you figure out what's the best way to do that. What's the most efficient use of inputs, of materials, of whatever, labor, and what delivers the greatest reward to the customer. And you figure out how to do that really, really well.
Yeah.
And once you get to that point, it's okay, how can I teach other people to do that repeatedly?
Yeah.
And I think, paraphrasing what you said earlier, like the systems and processes is, how do I document that in a way that other people can understand it and other people can do that in a repeatable way?
Yeah.
And then how do I have, support systems in place that, whether it's software or accounting or, task management software that helps keep everybody on track, where we know where the business is at all times. And so I'm rambling, but that's the dream. Like you go into business because you want to be able to do what you want to do when you want to do it.
Yeah.
And if you grow something that becomes a prison sentence that you can't leave, you're taking your laptop on vacation with you at all times. You're not present with your wife and your kids. That's just not a way to live. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Nobody sets out to have that be what their business looks like. Nobody wants to, have their marriage fail and their kids feel like they never grew up with a mom or dad, or, but those are kind of the nightmares that can play out if you don't think past being the person who does everything. So there's these, like, I like to think of it like there's these stages of entrepreneurship, and each one requires you to grow as a person to progress to the next. And so, a lot of people go into business are good at a thing, right? They're good at a trade, or they're good at some skill, and they want to turn that into a business. And so when the business starts, it's usually a solopreneur or somebody who's just like, if they're not a solopreneur, it's going to be them and a family member, or them and like a key person. And too many people stay in that spot. They stay stuck. And sometimes that's because they're afraid to hire. They don't know how to decide, like, when's the right time to hire and when can I afford to hire? And what they end up doing is undervaluing their own time and what they bring to the table. Because if you can hire somebody to do $20 an hour or $15 an hour work so you can do more valuable things, like, that's what you've got to have the courage to make that leap. So stage one is the heroic solopreneur. Stage two is when we move into this place where we're starting to realize we need people. We need the who in the seat that, I was usually, I was wearing all the hats. Now I need some other people to wear the hats. And that can grow to a certain point where, and really most business owners get to that point where they've got, you might be familiar with or our listeners may be, I know you are, Albert, but our listeners may be familiar with the book Who Not How, and it talks about this idea of
shout out to Dan Sullivan.
Yeah, Dan Sullivan. And get the people on your team to take the things off your plate that are not your unique skill. Your unique ability is how he terms it. So if I'm, really good at, I don't know, if I really, in our coaching business, the thing I love to do is to teach or to coach. And I want to coach our coaches, right? So for me to elevate out of just working with clients one-on-one, we got to add coaches to the team and then grow our coaching profile through that. But what it looks like for any business owner might be different. You figure out the lane you are best in, in your unique ability, and then you hire people to handle the bookkeeping or the sales or the marketing or operations if that's not your thing. And that's great. That's stage 2, and most business owners are very happy to be in stage 2. And businesses can really thrive and grow at that level. The only thing about stage 2 is that as a business owner, things are still going to be coming to you once they get to a certain point, right? If you've delegated authority to your sales manager to a certain level, but he needs to know, like, can I make this price break for this potential client? Or, your operations guy, you've given him a budget and he needs a piece of equipment that exceeds that budget. There's going to be things that get kicked up to your level where the business still runs through you at a certain point. And getting to the point where as little as possible is coming your way, questions are answered in advance through the systems we just referred to. Like that's moving up higher. You're doing better in that level of stage 2. The one that everybody talks about online, or the things that you hear about, is like a self-running business. And I would call that stage 3. And really getting to that point is the hardest thing. And it's in some business setups, it may not even be possible, but to get to that level, I think you have to think a little bit differently about how your mind works and your judgment calls are made. And some of that's intuition that has to be taken from an art to a science for a business owner, with the end goal that, like, if I walk away, this business will keep running without me for an indefinite amount of time, or at least for a long amount of time, And that's really the dream that a lot of business owners have. If you can get a business to that point, it's super easy to sell as well, right? And we talk about exit coaching. I mean, if we can get ourselves as high up on that level 2 as possible, or to the level 3, man, that's a turnkey business. That's a business that you can just hold and cash flow, or if you decide you want to, find an exit, it's a great place to be.
Yeah. Said another way, the stage 1 is, you need to be in your business every day.
Yeah.
Stage 2, you have the people in place that it can go one full sales cycle without you.
Right.
Which is typically 30 to 45 days, get the customer, invoice the customer, deliver the goods, collect the money. Like it can go one full sales cycle.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And then, stage 3 is it could potentially go an entire season without you, which is multiple months.
Right.
And, I think I'm thinking of my dad, or the mainstream business owner, rolling his eyes like, you mean I'm not going to work? My goal is to not work. and I don't think that's what we're saying.
Not at all.
What we're saying is, at a certain point, when you grow into a leader and an entrepreneur, there's only certain things that you need to be doing. And if you aren't doing those high level strategic things that are moving the business, into another league, then you're really hurting your business.
Yeah.
Taking a step back, like continuing to grow for growth's sake, like, maybe that's not what you want. And maybe you want to stay a certain size with a certain number of employees.
Yeah, we talked about that idea of like, when is enough enough? And as a business owner, you have to decide that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think in either of those cases, like a stage 3 business is like, you're working on the strategic parts. Through a season, your teams, your people are trained well to know how to make decisions, when various things happen, but they're also empowered to do that and lead, their business unit as, like they're a business owner. And so I think getting to that point is difficult. What are some of the practical tools and pieces in your mind that the businesses need to go from stage 2 to 3?
Yeah. So I think, something that we love to do in Stag Business Coaching is to map out processes. So we do that at the highest level with the whole business, right? But even when it comes to judgment calls, like I was talking about, some of these nuanced, often like gut level decisions that the owner is making that get, passed up the chain to him once it gets to a certain point. I'll give you an example. We're working with a missions organization, and the founder would make the final call about large flights that needed to be booked for mission trips, and trying to figure out a way to make that into a system that the employees in the business, in the business I'm working in, could make a call without him having to step in. And that took a lot of conversation and figuring out, okay, many factors involved here. How long is the layover? What's our, obviously, what's our price point? What are the logistics on the ground whenever the plane arrives? Like, is there going to be ground transportation available? Like, a lot of these things, the founder hadn't articulated what went into his thinking before we sat down and wrote it all out, mapped it all out. And even after we mapped it out, we tried to implement the system and realized there were like 3 more things he was thinking of that he just didn't realize he was thinking of when we originally mapped it. But you have to do this work painstakingly for each kind of call or each kind of decision that's still getting passed up the chain to this owner.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
For the business owner that heard that and is cringing, thinking like, man, that's a big decision. If it's a big flight and there's, 20 people flying to South America, like, that's probably 50 grand plus.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I need to make that decision.
Sure.
And I think there's a level of like emotional growth here for business owners, that a level of like humility that you have to develop of like, I'm not the only one who can make this decision.
Yeah.
Now there's, real consequences here if that is a poor decision, and money can be lost, but it's your job as the owner is to be the coach.
Right.
Is to coach up your people so that they can make those decisions. And really, like, there's some hard work you have to do, internally, of like being okay with that, having the humility to realize that other people can make these decisions. And yeah, they might make a wrong one occasionally, and we're going to fix that. But there's like some emotional development as a leader that I think that's hard work, and people don't want to talk about it. People want to put that off because, hey, we need to make money. We need to make the trains arrive on time. And I don't know. I feel like you can't say that enough. Of like, you need to develop yourself as an emotionally confident and capable person with enough humility to delegate the really important things.
Absolutely. We probably skipped over some things in like just jumping to try to go from, a level 2 to a level 3 owner of a business, because in that process of level 2, you need to be getting the kind of people on your team that you can trust. And that's how, a lot of times people, when they first go from solopreneur to having some people on their team, they fall into the classic mistake of micromanaging because they're just worried that somebody can't do it as well as they can. And again, that requires that personal growth you're talking about, because you've got to give trust over, and you've got to have humility enough to say, like, I can give this up and believe that this person can grow into this role, even though there are going to be mistakes made in the beginning, or they've got a learning curve that I've already had to progress through. Once we get to this level 3, or we're trying to get to this level 3 though, then yes, you're right. It's even harder to let go, because these are the things you've held on to for the longest. I love that you brought up the question though, that somebody might be out there asking, like, why would I want to build a business that doesn't need me? Like, why am I trying not to work here? And that's a good question. For that type of business owner, you're probably always going to want to work. I would say the entrepreneur who can get to that point is somebody who just has that drive. It's in them, they're going to be doing something. So it's really more about giving yourself the freedom to spend the time in the way you need it. And sometimes just getting renewed and having your mind free from the clutter of the day to day in a business puts you in a space where you can think about your business from a new angle that's going to breathe new life and new innovation into the way things are done, or help you see a market opportunity that you otherwise would be too stuck in the weeds to really acknowledge or think about how to even take advantage of that opportunity. So I think this is a really important progression for business owners who are interested in it. If they just want to they just want a lifestyle business, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like if that's what is enough for you, and you're not looking to grow into, having a business that can run without you, and you enjoy the work, like maybe this isn't for you. But I'm just saying, if having that progression appeals, then there are certain ways to go about kind of taking what's in your mind, putting it into a framework and a map, essentially, and then taking those steps from that map, putting it into a system that other people can follow, make decisions out of.
Okay. You talked about micromanagement.
Uh-huh.
The opposite of that is abdication.
Right. Yeah. The opposite mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. And so can you kind of address that a little bit? Because I think we can easily see the micromanager who's like butting their heads into everything. Hey, you forgot this decimal point. This or that. Go fix that. And checking everybody's work. The opposite of that is like
zero accountability.
You hire somebody and you're like, yep, it's your job.
Right.
So talk about, maybe some pitfalls in that, and like what is a happy medium? Can you define that?
Good question. So I feel like the micromanaging is probably more common than abdication, but both happen. Maybe the abdication happens somebody who just wants to be done and doesn't want to go. You don't realize that when you hire somebody, it's actually going to be more work in the beginning than so you're not getting the relief you're hoping for until you go through a process of training and onboarding. I think the best way to approach this before hiring, have clear definitions of what you want this person to be doing. I mean, it sounds so basic, but like a really good job description is important. It's not just something you put out there so people will to apply. It's going to provide clarity on what to expect from this person once they're in your business. And tied to those expectations, that job description, you need to have quantifiable metrics of their job performance. And those metrics should feed into your bottom line as a business. So I know that if this person I'm hiring does these 4 tasks well and hits these numbers that I have as goals for them, then our business is going to be more successful as a result. So having those definitions in place and then having regular check-ins, I would say at least weekly, and really, I think a daily check-in that can be short and just running through a few things that are on the plate for that day can be fine. But you're getting to the point where if you meddle beyond that, you really run the risk of micromanagement. Because what those check-ins should be geared towards are those measurables, and then let this person who you've hired do their job to get to those numbers, and provide an open door policy when it comes to, we need good training so they know how to do the job, of course. And a lot of businesses neglect that. And we also need to be willing to, like I said, have our door open to answer questions in the early going, because somebody in the training, there may be gaps we don't realize, and they just need to come and get a clarifying answer about things. But the last thing I want to be is the guy who stands and looks over the shoulder of the person I've hired to do a job and points at the screen and asks them to click here and go there and tell them, hey, do it my way. Like, again, that gets to the humility. Do I trust that I can hire people who can learn things? And in many cases, they should be able to do things better than I do if I give them that autonomy and that ability to work. So, but the way you keep it from being a total abdication is, are we checking in on our metrics? How are we doing? I like to think of it like a progress bar. If our 90-day goal is this, are we on track with the progress bar? We're 30 days in. Is the progress bar a third of the way full or more? If not, then how can I help jump in and provide more support? If it seems like you're just killing it, like, great, I'll lay off. And maybe on our next 90-day goal, we can try for something even better.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We talk all the time about, being a wanting to be more of a data-driven, decision company.
Yeah.
And, I think of a lot of entrepreneurs when we talk about KPIs or key performance indicators are like, that just doesn't work for my business. And what I would say to that, a lot of times, if you can't, quantify get your business down to the, the ones and zeros, you don't understand your business enough.
Yeah.
You don't understand the problem. You don't understand your goods and services well enough if you can't do that. And that just, a lot of times it just takes work.
Yeah.
It takes asking, your competitors, asking your peers. Sometimes it takes asking people in a completely different industry until you can get to, okay, what are the 3 to 5 for each department, kind of 15 overall for the business metrics that if they're going well, the business is healthy, we're delivering things on time to customers, they're satisfied, and we're making money.
Yeah. And a lot of creative types and trade types, they know how to do concrete things that provide value in the world, and that's what they build their business around. But when you start talking about these concepts, it may not be their strength. It may not be what they enjoy doing. And so the idea of building out objective measures and KPIs just does not appeal. And that's where Stag Business Coaching has been a real help for a lot of those business types, because we can step in and set that up for you, have the conversation so we understand what you're doing, but then help you translate that into something that gives your people training, gives your people systems to operate in, and gives targets so that everybody knows what they're aiming for every quarter and even every week to know, hey, what does success look like in my job? For a business owner who's not wired to think that way, when they get that kind of setup in place, they're going to reach a level that they probably never dreamed of. Typically, a lot of those business owners are solopreneurs or people who they just want to do the work. They enjoy, fixing the pipes, or they enjoy taking the pictures, or whatever it is. And I love working with those types because I feel like it's such a complementary relationship that we can provide.
For the tradesmen, for the Main Street business, those small business owners listening to this, what are the next steps they need to take to lean into this and lean into making their business more systems and process driven companies?
Yeah, well, I mean, if they want to do this on their own, I think the starting point would just to be get clarity on what your big picture goals are and try to reverse engineer from there. And what I mean by that is, what am I hoping this business will look like in terms of revenue, in terms of profit, in terms of headcount 5 years down the road? And if that's what I want to get to in 5 years, what does it need to look like in 3 years? If I'm going to move in that direction, what does it need to look like in 1 year, in 90 days? And that's where we can already have some objective measures as a starting point. And then the next thing that you need to look at is, what are the steps we carry out in the work that we do with our sales and marketing, with our operations? What are the actions that have to be taken? And do we do that consistently every time and with excellence. Because if I know these are the 5 steps that I need to do with sales and marketing, and these are the 5, I'm simplifying it, but however many steps I do whenever I'm providing my service, are they always being done the same way and in the best way possible? Or do we just kind of, if you get this operator, you'll have a good experience. And if you don't, then, it's not always great. If that's the case, you need consistency. And that feeds into your training. That feeds into what processes, what are the instructions or manual that people have to follow to get to do what they need to do. Now, if you're trying to do that on your own, and then beyond that, looking at your team and your dynamics, those are all things that business owners should be looking at. But it's a lot. There's a lot to juggle. Especially if you're a small business owner with a team of, say, like 5 to 10 people or even smaller. That's where Stag Business Coaching really, where we shine. So I would say if you don't want to do all that work by yourself, really you need a coach. And so for a business owner out there who's listening and thinking like, this all sounds great, but I don't want to set all that up and I don't have time. I think you just have to schedule a consultation with us. And so that would be, if you want to make this simple, just go to stagcoaching.com and book that consultation.
You nailed it, man. That was perfect. And that's, something we've spent a lot of time iterating on and getting better and better at. And yeah, that's, if you want to get there in a fraction of the time, give us a shout.
That's right.
All right, man. I appreciate it. And if you are a business owner and you feel stuck in your business, you feel that your business has plateaued and you don't know how to get to the next level, go to our website, stagcoaching.com. And in the upper right-hand corner, click to book your free consultation. And in your free consultation, we'll give you the next few steps you need to take to get your business to the next level. It's free, and it's on our website, stagcoaching.com. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.